Okay, so this is Clubhouse Theorycraft episode 5. I think last week we didn't have a recording up. I know some of you were there, but my power was out, so I was unable to man the boards, as it were. And this week we wanted to talk about predictions on emerging games and trends. But before that, if you were here last week, we're kind of trying a new format where we would spend a few minutes talking about what we've been playing at first, and then go over some gaming news for a little bit, and then really get into the meat of the topic towards the end. So I guess I'll kick it off. Kevin, what have you been playing over the last week? I saw you start streaming at like 8 a.m. What's going on?
Right. My stream schedule, well, that was the day before. It was like I started streaming at 1 a.m. So, yeah, my schedule is always completely messed up. So what I've been playing, there's so many games on my list for 2021, but I've been trying to level a character for TBC. So I've been playing some classic WoW. I've also been playing Final Fantasy XIV, the last expansion. I'm up to Shadowbringer, so I've been playing that to get through the story, which has been pretty good so far. And then a smattering of other games. I've been playing State of Decay 2 for the first time.
Oh, whoa.
Even though that's an older game. Mm-hmm. Today I just picked up Domina, which has been a blast because of the Twitch integration, and will lead into one of the things I think is part of the future. I think that's about it. Tons of games. I try to do variety, but I don't think I'm hitting the right amount of variety I'm trying to do on my stream, because I've been really erratic lately, but there's just so many good games to play right now. Despite everyone always saying I'm bored, there's no good games to play. I feel like there's so many.
Yeah, I've been just playing that It Takes Two game a bit more, and it's a lot of fun. And I think probably have one more gaming session, a couple hours, and I think it'll be over. But it's really good. I recommend it.
I haven't tried that one yet.
I have the fires of Valheim have been relit with my extremely casual once a week group of older people. We finally got our shit together enough to get to the swamp, and
Nice.
We're getting our butts kicked all over the place. And so it's been really tense to just start encountering enemies that can take you out in 2 hits again. The poison mechanic is really kicking our ass. And so we've had a couple instances of like we land on the beach like Normandy and like 2 people die. And then somebody immediately gets back in the boat to try to keep it away from the monsters. Like I ran deep into the woods. I found a temporary shelter and I like held out for 1 night so that I could make it back to the beach and try to build a portal. Meanwhile, everybody on Discord's like watching my stream while, running around naked at our main base, like 1,000 nautical yards away. Like it's really fun to move to new areas and feel like we're really setting up here. But I am starting to feel like it's cool watching the division of industry between like me and all of my friends whenever we hit new areas and just start fanning out. I discovered carts, which was hype for me, so I could bring back as much wood as I wanted. But then like when you're starting to try to get everybody together towards the next thing to do, I feel like it's kind of like when you go on vacation with a bunch of your friends or your family and like you're trying to get everybody out the door by a certain hour, where it's like you want to leave at 8, right. Someone else needs to work out, someone else hasn't finished like putting on their makeup yet, and it's just like it's kind of a pain in the butt. So you tend to just be like, let's just spread out, and people just aimlessly build and chill for a while. But having a blast. And so hopefully I'll finish that game by 2024. We'll see how it goes.
That's right.
But
before the 3 bosses are out, I'll try to get it done.
I know. Before they release in earnest and wipe my progress, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Candace.
Hello, late as usual. I'm sorry. I was deep in this design document that I was writing, which is always fun.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like you have a real job. That's not cool.
Yeah, I don't want to do this.
I'm sure. I did notice your very heartwarming tweet about Riot feeling like home. Really excited to hear that for you. Loving this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just struck me today so in my previous jobs working virtually, no one had adopted or fully adopted the virtual desk paradigm, which is like, for those who don't know, it is a Discord channel or another program like Discord. You make certain rooms that are called like Candace's desk or Justin's desk or something like that. And the idea or the expectation, should the whole team be adopting it, is that people chill in that Discord channel all day, or just whenever they're available. Like when you get up, you have to have the discipline to like remove yourself from the desk and stuff like that. And I was really, really skeptical because I think both the companies I worked for previously tried to adopt something like this and it just didn't work out. But yeah, so I was just like chilling at my desk, so to speak, and Justin stopped by, Xenogenic on Twitter, stopped by and he asked me a question, which I don't think that's happened since I've gone virtual. Like someone just like popped in chat, like in voice chat. I've had people IM me before, but never like, hey, are you free? Like, do you want to chat about this cool design thing? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. And then to make it feel even more organic, a producer like dropped in the channel in the middle of our conversation. It's like, hey, are you guys talking about anything important? Are you busy? And I was sharing my screen also because that like adds to the feeling of you're at someone's desk. And so I was just sort of like milling through the stuff that I can't talk about. And the producer's like, yeah, I saw Candace's screen. It didn't look like it was anything like too important. I just wanted to ask you two a real quick question since you were in the same place at the same time. And that just felt so weird because that's so normal in real life, but not normal when you're working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we answered his question and the producer like went away and we just resumed talking. And I was just like, that was so weird, but it was so normal at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So what costume do you wear in the VR chat once you put the goggles on?
What's your VTuber alter ego? Yeah.
Is one of you a taco?
But yeah, so I was just, and I'm just getting along so well with the people at Riot. It really just feels like a second home already. So just very happy.
Amazing.
That's great. Good to hear nice, warm stories coming out of Riot. The more the merrier.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of gaming news this week. Chris, you went in and just flooded it with bullet points on Monday. Eager beaver that you are. Is there anything you wanted to kind of lead off with? We got some new bullet points yesterday that are pretty big. I don't know where you want to start.
Yeah, let's end on those ones. But yeah, I think some of the stories I saw today was just that there's this really interesting survey, or kind of not survey, but really kind of like data that was released by Gillette, which showed that that Generation Z, which is kind of like the generation after millennials they see games as like their number one kind of entertainment of choice. Mm-hmm. It was something like 26%. The next I think generation was like millennials was like, I don't know, 16% or something like that. So it's significant.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's really interesting.
I also wanted to mention, like, yes, and I'm not trying to gatekeep here or goalkeep or say it's not gaming. I'm just saying that it's a different kind of gaming than you and I might expect. Mm-hmm. That Gen Z is big into. Like, have you guys, not Gen Z, but maybe even like, is there a Gen after Z? Like the kids,
there
like
is.
My nieces and nephews who are 7, 8, and 12.
I've heard Gen Alpha. They fully looped around, but I'm not sure what the right one is. I would say Gen Omega, given the climate death of the Earth approaching in 30 years, but I don't think that's
Gen Apocalypse.
Yeah,
Gen
I think Gen Z extends. Well, I think Gen Z extends to like
so you're
12
a Gen
or
Doomer,
something.
So.
Nope.
I decided to like spend some quality time, and this is just anecdotally, I'm not speaking for the whole industry, but I decided to spend some quality time with my 5-year-old nephew because it was his birthday and I haven't seen him since he was 2, and so I was like, hi, I'm your aunt, I know this is really weird, and he's like, well, I don't know who you are, but I'll play video games with you. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's cool. And he's like, do you want to play Roblox? And I'm like, yeah, I do.
Roblox, baby.
And what I realized is, and forgive me for being a boomer here, and I'm totally going to do more research on this now, but so it feels like, you know how when we were kids and we would play pretend, like, I'm going to play house, and
That's
maybe
right.
I'll even be a little salacious and be like, I'm the mommy and you're the daddy and whatever. Like, we're like exploring maturity through roles and role playing, you know? And then you grow up and you start playing like you start playing like role playing games where like, well, now I'm the sword hunter fantasy guy, or I'm the mage caster, and so you're playing this other new role. Well, and maybe you guys already know this, but like, we just played a game where he was the baby and I was the mommy, and that's it.
That's
like,
right.
Yeah.
We
That's
just
the number one
role-played.
game on Roblox, actually.
Yeah,
I
adopt
watched
me.
Chris play that one night. Yeah, he made an excellent baby.
But like,
I did a deep dive and I barely came out alive.
Barely got out alive.
and I was like,
Deep
I'm not even
undercover.
mad about this. This isn't like gripping gameplay or anything, but we're playing pretend, and I feel like if I had been at his house, we could have actually played, house. If he wanted to be like, treat me like I'm a baby, I mean, I'd have to ask his mom first. I'm like, is this weird? Are you okay with this? But like, sure. Like, I'll make you a bottle and stuff. But like, yeah, I'm very surprised, but not surprised at all. I'm like delighted by the fact that the next generation loves to role play as much as I think we do, in I wouldn't want to call it like a less refined sense, but just more of it like in a whimsical play sense.
Yeah. And they have better tools, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So we just had our imagination. That was it. Maybe a few toys or whatever, dolls.
Might have like a play kitchen or something.
Yeah, but they can just create this stuff, or in a lot of cases, other people create it for them. So Roblox is like it's mostly for kids. Like, kids are the ones that jump into that game the most. But it has like versions of every popular game that we all play, right? So there's Counter-Strike inside it. There's pizza delivery games. There's war games. There's prison escape games. Like, there's Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, there's just every version of popular game. There's an Among Us in there, and so kids can like sample all these things. But it's like using Roblox, art and whatnot. So.
Yeah, it made me want to make a Roblox. I was just like, I was looking at the tools available and like the things that you did, the way that you interacted with people, and I was just like, I bet I could remake Duck Duck Goose before the end of tonight and be like, who in the house wants to play Duck Duck Goose with me? But then I was like, fuck it, I'm tired.
The greatest thing for me was playing Escape from Tarkov and having my 10-year-old daughter come in and be like, hey, that's a nice M4 you got there. As I'm tricking out one of my guns. I was like, wait, I'm sorry, what? It's like, oh yeah, I collect those in Roblox, When the prisoners escape, you're lucky if you can get an M4 and escape in a police car. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So good.
Awesome. Well, so the next item on the news is that Amazon Studios has canceled the Lord of the Rings MMO.
I'm going to go ahead and shrink right up into my own body on this one.
You sure there's nothing you can offer? Not going to take the bait?
Shrink right into my little
The one
body.
person with info. Now we just get to speculate and giggle.
So they're citing a lawsuit with Tencent over the rights. So apparently Tencent purchased another company and somebody there who owned the rights of a Lord of the Rings game. And Tencent and Amazon could not see eye to eye, and so the project was canceled.
Sad news for...
That's it. It's the end of the story then.
That's really, I mean, yes, it's really sad because for anyone who's listening, the joke here is that I worked on that game. And it's not a joke because it's real. But the very, very talented people, everyone was very into making this game. Were like huge Lord of the Rings fans. And so when I left the team, it wasn't because, I don't know, I left the team not because I didn't like anyone there or that I didn't believe in the product. I left because, I mean, it's my dream to make the next generation of MMO, and that, I mean, I had the opportunity to do that on the Lord of the Rings game as well, but I fell in love with the right IP, and just, it sucks, but I moved on. And so it's very, very sad now that the people that I left behind literally just like, how many months ago? 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, I guess their project got canceled. Has that actually been confirmed by Amazon yet, or is that still just a Bloomberg article?
That's a good question.
I saw it reported by Reuters. So as far as I'm concerned, that's etched in stone. I mean, Reuters doesn't play. But
Yeah. But anyway, I'm sure there's gonna be more. There's gonna be more Lord of the Rings games, of course. The whole movie is coming,
Yeah.
or sorry, TV show is coming up.
For sure.
There'll be more Lord of the Rings games. Okay,
I think
so
I
next,
can say, because
okay,
I might
yes,
be on the credits of it. I'm not sure. I was working on New World whenever I left Amazon.
okay.
So that's all I'll say. Also,
so Candace's Amazon contributions will be see the light of day somehow. That's good.
yeah, it's my first canceled title. It's very sad.
Yikes! Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's right, normal. So, okay, next line item we had was the Days Gone director went off on some rant on Jaffe's podcast. Do you ever watch that, Kevin?
No, I missed the story.
Yeah,
I missed this story completely.
It's a strong brand in video games podcasting. It is I've actually only really ever watched clips, some of which have just like, well, he's a pretty singular dude, and he's very open with his opinions. It's very much like an uncensored feeling show. But this episode was like 4.5 hours long, where you had this guy John Garvin on. Like, I mean, I tried to watch it in prep for this talk, and I could not get through the whole thing. But it was extremely candid. I don't know, Chris, like you watch more Jaffe cast than I do. Is that kind of the tone of all of them? Like they're really just, he seems like he's beholden to basically fucking no one at this point.
Yeah, I mean he keeps it real, you know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean the basic argument, what got people upset was basically the Days Gone director essentially said that, the reason why there's not going to be a sequel is because not enough players purchased the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually that's used as a metric to greenlight the next, the sequel or whatever. And so, yep. And so that kind of like caused like a shitstorm a little bit, but it was entertaining because I've been watching his YouTube channel for a while now.
So he got pretty upset because he apparently, like, did he want to make a sequel, but he was upset that not enough people bought it, so he couldn't. Like, but it was well received. He did play it.
I think there were a number of issues, in reviews, what happened with the game. A lot of people felt it was just too narrative driven. A lot of people felt like, the open world aspect had issues. There's things like that. But, he did just say, if you care about a game and want to see a sequel, buy it full price when it comes out. But
so is this just him not being able to accept that the market decided it didn't deserve a sequel, or is he railing
arguably the people who wanted a sequel paid full price.
Right.
I don't think that it's not like, it doesn't seem to me like Jaffe had him on because they were looking to like spill the tea or just like, what's the detail with Days Gone 2 not happening. I think that is just the sort of one like lead line that everybody has grabbed from the podcast, but he seems like just a major fan of Jaffe's and his directorial style and everything. And I didn't realize how deeply embedded in the industry John Garvin's been. Like, I mean, I played Siphon Filter when I was a teenager and completely forgot that there was like that sort of Metal Gear Solid clone running around the same time. And I guess Days Gone ties into it. The world's connected. But it was just kind of like two guys from a very specific point in the industry, which Chris, like I was saying to Chris last night, he really identified this kind of like taxonomy of developers like from this era that love making these like very narrative driven single player games. And I guess John Garvin's in that crew. And Yeah, he was just kind of spilling the beans on his time at Sony and like various scuffles he had with kind of like upper management in terms of some trying to control the direction of the game, clamping down on like, there's this famously long, I guess, just riding in a cart talking to someone else type scene, a golf cart in Days Gone, and like they majorly had to cut it back. And it very much has, I don't know, it's Clubhouse. So to me, it comes off as like two guys basically trying to tread as loudly but as carefully around what it's like to be like a nuanced yet sort of aggrieved white male with opinions in the game development industry today. And like how to make the types of things you want, how to deal with consumer backlash over like representation versus their own reputations, and sexual maturity in games, and making sure everything's all balanced. Like I don't know how to describe the tone of the cast. I don't know if I can deal with 4 hours of it, but it was like shop talk. Like if you've been working in the industry for a while, it's a very familiar kind of tone between the two dudes.
Yeah, that's why I like it. It's like old school, developers.
Definitely reminds me I got to start drinking more on my stream so I can really start voicing my opinions.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast would be like if you and McCraft were having a conversation, it was streamed. That's how it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. And then the last news item we have is the most recent one, which is Jeff Kaplan has left Blizzard after 19 years. Yeah, big story there, and it was actually kind of personally shocking to me, just because I always kind of imagined Jeff would finish Overwatch 2 before he'd leave.
Right.
I think everyone in the team on Overwatch 2, I've spoken to a number of them since the announcement. They were kind of shocked that he'd leave this early. So it kind of just seems like he has some sort of conflict with higher ups or with Activision or something like that, and that's kind of spurred him leaving early. But
maybe you have inside information, but at a certain point in the game's development, right, you kind of go from, hey, we figured out the big and interesting problems, now it's just content churn, right? And then that's usually a place where you want to step away, especially as a lead, if you're going to leave then, because you need someone else to kind of take over the reins at that point and get their mark in it. So
Adham did the same, if you remember, right before Vanilla was launched. Adham was gone before we actually launched.
Yeah,
but he did obviously laid the foundation for Vanilla WoW, like tons and tons of the early work. So yeah, he might have felt like, and it also probably comes at a time. I don't know how the crunch schedule's like on Overwatch 2 or anything, but like when you have a fair amount of money and like you've been crunching a ton, like all the little annoyances just get to you more because you realize I could just go do something else, like, so, whereas everyone else is waiting for the payoff, the rest of the team is waiting for the payoff.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And also, looking at the timing, right, at a certain point when you've built a project like that a couple times in a row, you kind of want to just go back to building things with your friends too. So it wouldn't be surprised me if you bounced over to Bonfire and hung out with Rob again, or just took some time off, because, I'm at that stage right now on a project where we've got most of the really big problems solved. And I'm like, cool, I've done the cool shit. But now the rest of it is just kind of labor work. Maybe it's time to hand that off, And so I kind of just feel that when I think about Jeff. And Aaron Keller, right, is a very competent level designer and has been for years. And it seems like he's the right one to be doing single player Overwatch or even group against PvE Overwatch, right? So Aaron's probably been actually doing a lot of the execution on that for a while. So I don't know that it's going to be that dramatic a transfer of power.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
That certainly is like either the most charitable or the least controversial, however you want to put it, like explanation for him departing mid-project. But I think Chris kind of raises a fair point too. From folks I've talked to, it didn't seem like anyone was expecting him to leave midway through. And all my love to the people that I know working on Overwatch 2, but the optics on it have felt really weird to me from the beginning. Like, the announcement around BlizzCon when even Jeff came out first and like had to spend most of his time justifying why they put a 2 on it, like as if he was getting in front of this preemptive criticism. It just, I feel like I still don't have a really strong sense of what that game wants to do, which is normal. It's not released yet. It's not like we need to know all of the gory details, but there was a playable build on the floor like 2 years ago, and I honestly kind of didn't love it. I love the original Overwatch, but I felt like, to me, it felt kind of like a DLC sort of execution of the concept. And I know that was a common criticism. This isn't like some insane take or anything, but I just don't feel like they've really put a lot out there to show people that they've evolved the design since. I don't know how hungry the community is for this kind of news, but like, I hope Jeff's, he left and, got what he wanted and he's going somewhere else, and maybe he's just, cracked the bottle on the ship and now it's sailing off with everyone making content. But I hope it's on a good course, basically. And this isn't,
right. It is very tough for everyone else. Like, speaking from experience, when Alan left, like, regardless of where he was at personally and that he felt like it was a decent time to leave, it definitely impacts the team in a way, like when you lose your leader before it's done. Like, it's like, wait, is there something wrong? Is there something I don't know? Like, it can be an unsettling experience. And if there's any questions about, like, internally what the game is supposed to be or trying to be, in addition to the doubts that we might have, being in the fan base, that can be compounded by, your leader leaving.
Yeah. So, 19 years is a long time, almost 20 years there. So,
yeah. Fatigue is certainly an element.
Yeah, it doesn't not make sense. But again, I still think it's suspicious that he would leave before at least Overwatch 2 was in a state where it's basically, just have to like just put it out the door, and I still think I have a lot of work to do still with the game. But
well, and also that's 1 year before getting the coveted crown, right?
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
So that's a little sus.
I didn't realize there was a crown. Is there really a crown?
There's really a crown, and it's awful. I looked at it, I'm like, I don't ever want that thing.
I immediately think of the burger.
Weta or something.
Yeah, I immediately think of the burger place scene in Role Models, where they're all sitting around the table with the king. Anyway, I don't know if you guys remember.
I thought about staying because I was there 13 and a half years. So like if I just stayed another year and a half, I could have gotten the ring. And I was like, man, I should just do that, which is the silliest thing ever, because that ring would have ended up costing me like in the 6 digits of money.
Yeah. You better have real.
Yeah, when I left in my email, I did put at the end, I wanted that damn ring too, but not getting it.
Yeah, I just moved and actually found my sword. It was stashed in a corner of my storage and had been for years. I pulled the damn thing out and it's now completely rusted. I'm like, well, that was interesting.
No.
I got my shield back. So at Blizzard, they give you a sword at 5 years, for those who don't know, and a shield at 10 years. And mine was on the wall above my desk, mounted before we left for COVID. And whenever I left the company, they sort of unceremoniously tucked all of my belongings into boxes. And they were like, come get your shit. Everything you own's in a box to the left. And when I got my sword back, or my shield back, it is like, I don't know what happens to brass, but I also don't know, like, it was sticky. Like, and so in my headcanon, there are these people in like biohazard suits just walking around the Blizzard office, like delousing it with just like fire hydrant, like, or what is it? Fire extinguishers of like sticky substance, just like.
That's nasty.
Oh no, yeah. that was to get rid of the cooties. That had nothing to do with COVID.
That's just my stuff, yeah.
Hose it down. Just don't use a black light when you're looking at your shield.
I got some brass polish just in case I could fix it, but yeah, it looks pretty rough now. I wouldn't even want to hang it up now.
No.
That sucks. So did you guys actually do the actual game predictions?
No, that's where we are now.
No, we're gonna get to that right now, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Kevin, you said you had some lined up already, so go for it.
Did I? I feel the exact opposite.
Domino.
Actually, one occurred to me just recently playing Domino, right? So, but in general, yeah, like I always, rather than new genres, I'm always just, pulling my hair out at the untapped potential of so many of the genres that we have. Like I see so many of them, so many great genres going more towards the dead state rather than meeting their true potential, I feel. So, having played Domina today, I do think there is a genre for Twitch integrated games that's, just really starting and has a lot of potential. Like Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be using a fair bit of Twitch integration. I don't know if many of you saw the beta from last year and how that worked. And Domino uses a ton, which is really fun. It pulls your viewers right into the experience. They get to be gladiators and they get to die horrible deaths, and everybody cheers. And but there's very few games that have tapped into sort of that play thing, and it's still a pretty small-ish market in terms of total player base. But it does have the ability to really explode, as we've seen with games like Valheim and Tarkov have really benefited from Twitch exposure. So I think indie games that try to leverage, Twitch integration can do themselves a lot of favors in, finding that exposure if it's fun to pull in viewers and it can be entertaining in its own right.
Yeah, do you know if that game's written in that Lumberyard engine that Amazon uses? Because I know there's supposed to be like a lot of built-in like Twitch integrations with that.
Why is Candace laughing when we say Lumberyard?
Hasn't Lumberyard has shipped. There's like a coffee-oriented fighting game, and I think that's and TGT, the Grand Tour, but I don't think it has shipped.
Are we counting Star
else.
Citizen as shipped? Isn't that using like modified?
But, I know New World is like right there too, but I'm just saying like as far as shipped titles go,
right?
I don't think that Tarkov. I guess Tarkov isn't shipped either, so that's fair. It's in pre-order state.
Tarkov is Unity.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Are you familiar with any of the Twitch integrations that it makes really easy to bring in thanks to your time working on it? Well, you obviously can't say a lot about your development time, but I'm guessing they put you on homegrown engines while you were there?
Who knows?
Oh my Lord. Okay. Yes, Lumberyard exists. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I played around with it a little bit, and the engine, I don't know, it's not great. But anyways,
I have used Lumberyard professionally. I made New World for a while.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think the Twitch integration things. I think you will see some of that. I just think, I don't know. It kind of just still seems sort of gimmicky. I haven't seen a game yet where it's integrated at such a elegant way. And then you also have the risk of just, what if there's what if you're playing it without like Twitch, right? Like how intertwined and dependent is it, right?
Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot of potential there for sure. And I still think we haven't totally realized a game that could really, utilize its full potential,
Yep, for sure.
Forgive me for sounding shitty, but is Twitch integration more important than like one, just having a good game to play to begin with, like that like people could commentate on and have opinions on? Like that's obvious, but like also is the time or the effort that you put into Twitch integration for your game
worth it, right?
Yeah, when you could probably just like buy stream time,
right,
as advertisement.
Yeah, it is definitely sort of like it has to be built with Twitch in mind, right? Like craft the experience, or at least have a game that's conducive to Twitch integration, because it's total chaos, right? When you allow the viewers to dictate where the game's going to go, it ends up as total chaos because you just never know what your viewers are going to do. They're not consistent, right? So it has to be a game that revels in the chaos of the narrative, essentially.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because I was just wondering, like, is it your opinion that streamers will play games with good Twitch integration just because they have good Twitch integration and they want to do those kind of activities? Or did people stream the games that they want to play?
I don't think that there's great examples yet of really, really good games and really good Twitch integration. I see the potential when I play Domino, but the game is still struggling in a lot of ways. So I don't think it's ready to catch on, so to speak. But I do think that the interaction between the streamer and his community is huge. And that's where a lot of the potential for the experience, comes from, rather than just because I was playing Outer Worlds recently, and I was just kind of doing my thing, and it felt really flat as a stream game because Twitch is just kind of watching me do my thing, like there was very little back and forth. And that doesn't seem like, it's meeting the potential of Twitch. But when you see people like Bitbot is a thing in Tarkov, right? Like you can spend bits to force the person playing Tarkov to throw a grenade. So
that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Or yell something. So if you're trying to sneak around and suddenly they're throwing grenades and yelling stuff, right? Like it can totally get you killed. Right?
So can you also like promote people from your Twitch chat as scabs in the game, maybe? Because that would be dope.
Well, you can't, but yeah, I think the potential is there to create a game that tries to leverage the viewership and create a story between the streamer and the viewers, because I think that's what a lot of viewers really want is, like, if they love just having the streamer say their name out loud, right, because they read a message of theirs, then being a part of the story of this video game is like a home run, in terms of the viewer experience. So I do think there's potential there to tap into, but it is still very niche, and you can definitely make the argument that it's gimmicky.
So this is not particularly sexy or surprising, but I think we're going to see, in terms of new game genres, is a surge in these semi-sports games. I think we're going to see a whole bunch of those where, it's a bunch of players on a team playing some sort of variant sports ball against other people, right? They've just seen a lot of interest in that space and the growth of esports, right? Even though it's more like League and Overwatch and so on, has led a lot of people the natural conclusion, let's go back to sports, but now take advantage of the digital space. So I'm expecting to see a surge there.
What's an example of one that's emerging right now? So I can Google it.
Sure. You want an actual example of one. These are ones that I see in development. But I mean, the first one, right, is Rocket League, right? You start with Rocket League and look at how that was basically soccer with cars, right? Just look at more things like that, try to get into that space, but be more accessible.
I see. Cool, thanks.
There is one that's, it's announced and I forget what it's called, but it's, it's like sort of like a dodgeball sort of game, an arena.
Yeah.
I forget what that game is called, but
if anyone knows, feel free to raise your hand, by the way.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. The sports team games, that's cool.
Can we get a comeback for Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball?
Oh my God, I still have an original Xbox so that I can play that game. I do.
Sweet. I would stream that 24/7.
Yeah. So one genre I think is going to be sort of growing. I think you already see it a little bit now. It's certainly with Among Us. Essentially, games where it's kind of like low skill, kind of, not to say that there's no skill in Among Us, but the skill ceiling is lower, and it's kind of more the really objective of the game is to really hang out with your friends and have an excuse to do something. So it's like kind of like almost social, like escape room games, or like puzzles sort of things, or even if it's like D&D or esque adjacent. So tiny, smaller games that are replayable, that really leverage the social aspect, and like it depends on who you're playing with rather than what the actual game is. I think those are going to be bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think Among Us is really kind of proven out that thesis that there's a big demand for these types of games. The games that I love are really like deep system games that have all these like different things you can learn and master and all that sort of thing. But I think for a lot of people, that's not really what they're looking for. They're just looking for an excuse to hang out with their friends and chat and then do something together.
Yeah, just social party games, but in the digital space.
Yeah,
especially
have you guys
with
checked?
The pandemic are really powerful.
Yeah, have you guys checked out Rec Room? This is basically like one of those platforms that's trying to basically have like, hey, bring a whole bunch of people and play through like a short game experience, in addition to having like a hangout room with voice chat. I saw one that basically had this hallway, and they gave you a bow at the beginning. It's a VR game, and as you go through this hallway, right, with your friends, there's just a sea of like the me characters they have in that game. But you all have a bow, and you're shooting little spiders and wizards that are popping out of the walls like a spooky haunted house, right? And I would just love to see more stuff like that, just kind of mass produced by, player content, essentially. Because I think that's kind of like those, you want those fun hangouts, but you don't want like necessarily long development times or things like that. Just interesting variants on that concept that players put together.
Yeah, Rec Room's a really good example. Yeah. So Luca and Candace, how about you guys go, and then we can bring people up too who want to give their ideas.
Luca, you go, because I'm still just like trying to wrap my mind around.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have just the most pleb takes on this. But Clay, we have developed quite a bit for Apple and iOS. Our game Hot Lava has done really well on it. It's been in Apple Arcade. They have their huge sort of like LiDAR-enabled game push. And I've never been sort of a passionate adopter of AR, VR, and these sorts of platforms. But I wonder if, and I missed the Pokemon Go summer of a couple of years ago, but kind of on the heels of our talk last week about people continuing to play post-corona and how that might look, I do wonder if we're just going to get another surge of location-based stuff as people are sort of fatiguing, and maybe there's less of a need for these constantly online cozy I'm with my friends experiences all the time as people are moving around. I could see just kind of like a resurgence there. I'm hoping for more of that kind of stuff. But again, it's tough to know what'll hit. I am really heartened by just how seamless the mobile kind of PC big box crossplay was, between Genshin and such last year. And I do think that for as much as core gamers resist this idea of, don't you guys just have phones, the easier it gets to move between those worlds. Maybe we will start to really see mobile hit the AAA shores in a way that feels frictionless to that audience. And it could coincide with things opening back up. So, yeah, not a very inventive new genre answer, but that's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah. I wonder curious what the in the pandemic world is the Pokemon Go like game design encouraging people to stay away from each other or meet up in the same spread out everyone.
Well,
they just had a new game system to avoid other people.
Right. Yeah.
And the Antec is killing it too. So
yeah, they go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say I had a weird one, but if you're still talking about that topic, I'll let you finish.
It's on you, Zell, if you have a weird one.
Oh God, I have a lot of things. I'll just actually just say that what I want to see a ton of, and it's really hard to design and even harder to get backing behind. I want to see a ton of asymmetrical games, right? Things like the Twitch experiences that Kevin mentioned, and games where different players interact in dramatically different ways within the same world. I don't think we're going to see a surge of those because it's so hard to make, but I would love to.
Yeah, that has my mind spinning for sure. Ways that persistent worlds where like the streamer plays for 8 hours in this world and then he goes to sleep, and the viewers craft things in the world through polling and stuff like that to create challenges or modifications to the world, and then the streamer comes back to a whole new thing.
Oh, so you meant like
A whole new
asynchronous kind of gameplay, but then you meant asymmetrical because like one person has all the power.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what Zelnath was thinking, but that's what crossed my mind as soon as he started talking about that idea.
That's one of the ways of expressing it. I tend to go in very different ways. Like, for example, if anyone's played Crawl, right? You have one player's the hero, and other players can possess the monsters. That's one dynamic. Another one is you have players playing together, but one person actually, plays a character in the game world. The other possesses and moves a part of the game world. You have other ones that are like, hey, one person has the information they need to relay to the players in order to make good decisions in the moment. Things like that are really interesting.
There was it might have been a Reddit post I saw, or else it was a tweet circulating around a month or two ago of this asymmetrical game someone was building, where someone was basically controlling a gigantic, Andros Mask style VR avatar and swiping against people that were playing as tiny little folks being controlled with controllers. And it looked like a blast. I'm sure it would be difficult to pull off, and I don't know what the sort of legacy of the 4v1 kind of evolve sort of genre is, but it looked really neat in practice. I agree. Those asymmetrical games, I think, present really well. I imagine they're really challenging to get feeling balanced, really, once the meta is solved.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
clear,
certainly, like Dead by Daylight is incredibly popular now too, especially with younger audiences, and that's kind of an asymmetric thing, right? Where one person's like the villain, and everybody else is running in horror, right? So
Predator didn't do as well, sadly.
yeah. By the way, if
Alien
anybody else
Predator
wants to give your take on predictions on new game genres, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you up.
Here's my weird one. And I think there's like a whole field of study for child psychology that we need to do, given like the modern child and not the child studies that were done in the 50s and the 60s, before an internet existed. I think that games that let children feel sophisticated and like appear to older people, not appear, but as a peer, right? So that's what Among Us is really good at. When you see someone in Among Us, you have to assume they're someone that is, or maybe you don't have to assume, but you think like this person is someone who's going to be at my same intelligence level, and they're going to be my same age. And you see this happening a lot. Like that's why kids like to play Overwatch. They like to feel, and they won't speak because they don't want to, let everyone know I'm just a kid. And so the more you can, it's not like a role play thing, but it's more of like I get to prove how grown up I am kind of thing. There's a whole lot of study that needs to be done for this, but I think that a game that lets kids get to feel sophisticated will be big. And so far, the games that let kids feel sophisticated are still rather childlike, like Among Us and Roblox. So if there's one that like the adults can adopt, and then the kids get to feel like they're among the adults, that will be huge.
Like that was
I have a personal story on that topic. Real quick, when I was 13, I actually worked for a French video game company called Cyberjour on this little Growl online game. It was basically running around in Zelda, like Zelda 3. And I just told people when I was working on it that I was 24, and they just bought it. Right? It was the internet. There was no voice communications. And so I got to spend like 3 years working on this game with a team of like late teens, college students, and adults. And it was very gratifying and educational.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say the vanilla WoW experience was that when this is before Discord, right? So most people didn't have voice chat. It was only in-game chat. And there were, tons of people come to my channel saying they started playing when they were 8 or 9 or 10. And, being able to fit into that raid guild, and earn a spot and be able to help down the boss and, be a part of this thing and be surrounded by what appeared to be, and most likely were, a lot of adults, was probably tremendously gratifying for a lot of kids.
And imagine like
transformational for them
and
as
a lot
well.
of adults too. I mean, I remember Yeah, when we first started raiding, and there's suddenly the huge reveal of how insanely age diverse your guild is, and it's like people taking care of their kids while you're raiding. And I was like a just post college burnout. I had no idea that folks with responsibilities were like staying up till 2 pushing molten core with me, and I thought that was super cool. And they were probably stoked to be around such a bunch of young adult DPS nerds too.
And here's my boomer analogy: is like, remember when your parents would let you stay up late and watch TV with them, and you felt like you were fucking so cool?
Yeah.
There's my thing. And yeah, I remember that too. And
your first rated R movie with the parents,
Yeah.
Right? God, I get to watch this.
Because it also works in both directions. The thing I appreciated the most when I met my real life guild in EverQuest for the first time was seeing I didn't know we had a 73-year-old woman in our guild, and she was the coolest fucking lady ever. And I was already friends with her for like a year before I met her. And she's like, yeah, I was really nervous to come to this, this get together, but her son was also in the guild, who was a grown man. And I just remember thinking like, wow, this is the quality time that she gets to spend with her son now. And I think that these games that kind of transcend age or sophistication will also help as we millennials and or Gen Xers start to get up there in age where we still want to connect with our families or our friends, or we want to feel like we're still relevant, like, taking off our skinny jeans and parting our hair in the middle now,
You have hair?
Off hair, yeah.
What's that like? So any game that's going to do terribly in any genre that no one should ever make a game in is one that I feel inferior to all the, young kids out there that are playing. So for any developers out there that are thinking, I'm going to make a game for Zoomers, how dare you?
Yeah. Always thinking about trying to make a game for a target, age is just always dicey, I think. Ask the My Little Pony creators.
You stay away from the brony. They're good people.
But I remember as a guild leader in WoW, just like, I remember having people, apply to the guild, and we would ask what age they were, and sometimes they'd be like 30, early 30s. And I remember thinking, wow, they're just so old. Like, it's like a 19 to 22-year-old or whatever. But now it's just like
still playing video games at level 30 or years old. I don't know why there was a competitive. They ran tournaments for a competitive My Little Pony trading card game. I don't know why they were thinking that the mixture of little girls and the sweatiest like trading card game spike wouldn't be a good combination. So good.
Rob, welcome to the stage, by the way.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to see, this actually all reminded me of sort of a trend that's been popping up, and I was wondering if anyone had discussed community as a service as a new genre that people have started talking about.
I haven't heard that. What's community as a service?
Well, okay, so people are lonely. We can get into that. But community as a service sort of is that it's sort of an extension of like things that already are happening in a game. So a lot of the talk that you've had here, where it's been like, I met my WoW guild, or, I made friends this way, is sort of like, it's things that have naturally happened in games, but they've never sort of they never really create games in which like this is the thing that we want people to do, is to make friends, is to find a community and things like that. And I feel like
more explicitly for that purpose. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so I think there is there's a way here where you can start building games around community, where the idea is that you go in, you're going to play a part of this game, but the real sort of like meat and potatoes of like what's going on is that you have to interact with other people in order to get what you want to accomplish.
Right, or at least strongly encouraged, yeah.
Yeah, and the ways that you interact with them have to be meaningful. So it's more than just like, I'll trade you this stick for that stone or whatever that is. Or I need like 5 people to like kill whatever things that are going on. But you sort of find your niche within this world, and you sort of create things or you do things that are helpful to you. And so you sort of see it with some like Valheim, where you have people who really just want to build shit. So they go around and they just build shit, and that's all they want to do. You have people who want to like do resources, and so they go out and they pick out all the resources they want to. And some people just want to like go out and fight things, and so you help to go fight things. But then you step it up, and so you get a game like Baseball, where it's a game about being a fan of imaginary baseball teams, and you have to sort of work together in order to help vote on the best outcome for your team.
Right.
That's out there.
Well, I can speak from the experience of working on WoW, that was of critical importance to the experience for us. Like, and I still believe that one of the pillars of good MMO design is that social aspect, which involves forcing collision between players and then encouraging them to group up and benefit from that mutual, goal-oriented experience. And it's one of the things that modern MMOs, I think, have moved away from in a lot of ways, in the interest of like lowering queue times for content and things like that. So we have cross-server everything, and now we have giant pools of people that you'll never see again from experience to experience, rather than smaller communities that interact with much more frequency and need each other, and reputation matters and all that stuff. So. But yeah, back in the day, that exactly what you're talking about was to us a critical component of making WoW what it was, and that's one of the things I think the genre has to work harder at getting back to in order to meet its sort of reach its full potential.
Yeah, you're really trying to build basically interdependence. You're engineering interdependence between players, right? Like you were saying, you need to, because I see this also in Valheim, where some of my friends are the builders, some friends don't hate building and they want to go gather things. Some people are the hunters, they just want to go kill stuff, and you got to create sort of an economy in a game and systems to really make them all feel like they're contributing and that they're, all kind of want to rely on each other. I mean, because that's how real life is, right? So
yeah, exactly. And different people with different interests and skill sets can really shine in each of those different areas. So they get to be special, and they get to be, well sought after or desirable in a community sense.
Absolutely. But I think there's also Valheim. I brought up Valheim because I think it's a very sort of simple sort of explanation. But you also see this starting to pop up in other places that they weren't necessarily designed for to begin with, which is sort of that GTA Online world where you have people who are role playing. And so you'll have like role players who will go in and they will be a part of a community of hundreds of other people who are playing certain characters, or there's certain things. Like a friend of mine is running for mayor of this fake town that he was like a nurse. He was a nurse in training going into it. And so like basically all he does is like, he just has very general sort of reactions and sort of helps people out in this world. But it's a very sort of strange sort of connection where it's like, okay, maybe not everything has to be like focused on like we have to accomplish this thing, but we can have this sort of experience together and get to know other people within the world a little bit closer, more than just like the action or the verbs that are being presented by the game itself.
And as Candace mentioned earlier about Roblox, I think if the kids today are heavily into that role play experience, then the teenagers of tomorrow are going to be looking for games that are more sophisticated or more adult or more mature, at least seemingly, to continue that sort of experience potentially. So definitely seems like a market that's growing.
Another game to look out for a lot of these sort of system designs is our favorite MMO designer, Raf Koster's Playable Worlds company. He's working on an MMO that will have a lot of these sort of, old school ideas like from Ultima where, there's a role for everybody. There's interdependence. There's a world that kind of has scarcity and all that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I'm super fascinated with what he's learned from Ultima, in terms of that kind of stuff. So putting that knowledge to work in the next game of his will be really interesting to see.
Yep.
I actually, CJ, if you're still here, I noticed your hand went up earlier in the show or whatever, and I wasn't sure if you had something you wanted to add to that particular topic, or if you had something that you wanted to ask. I know that we glossed right over you, and I'm sorry.
Oh, hello. I was raising my hand to talk about the I forgot his name, where he got in trouble for an interview. He was basically saying that they're not doing the sequel because
Days Gone director. Yep.
Yeah, the Days Gone thing. And I felt like one of the big points from everything I read about that you guys kind of glossed over was that one of the big things he was saying is that if you like a game, you should never buy it on sale and only ever pay full price for it. Because apparently on sale games just don't sustain a studio. And that was that was the big thing because, gamers are with Steam and everything. I mean, everything's cheap on Steam, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
gamers have learned that buying things for full price is ridiculous because there's always a sale coming around the corner. So,
right,
and we're
which
gamers,
kind
so
of
an expectation that we buy things at full price is, fantasy. Like regardless of how true it might be, it's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of extends into the hot topic of a lot of companies are attempting to raise the base price for a lot of console games, right?
Yeah, or they offer super packages and season passes and all kinds of cosmetic upgrades with the hope that whales will, the whales will sustain all the people paying half price for the game.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the thing with Days Gone is it's challenging to create a new. I mean, one of the most challenging things to do in the industry right now is to create a premium AAA single player only game, and especially a story based one. Yeah, and so that is already really, really hard. And then when you try to do a new IP. That is really, really hard, right? And since it is a premium game, you have to pay $60 up front. A lot of people just don't know if they want to trust it yet. You have to build an audience, you have to build fans for the IP, right? And so if you have like $200 million project, $300 million project for the single player game, and it just doesn't return enough profit margins in that initial game, then I mean, a lot of the studio stipulations is just that it needs to make a certain amount of money to warrant a sequel, and I get all that, and that's how the industry has traditionally worked. But it's just so much harder to get people to fork out $60 for a new genre single player game. Like, how do they know it's going to be good yet?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I get that. At the same time, like as a developer, though, that's what I want to be fucking building, right? I want to go make Dark Souls, but you're, a cat or whatever, right? And just have some crazy divergent single player experience.
I don't want to work on just FYI.
Well, I would never hire you
Go ahead.
for that, Kevin. So, okay, fine.
Well,
Change the cat for cockroach or spider or whatever.
Okay,
The point
that's
being,
totally cool. Yeah.
okay, great.
Also-
As soon as we find a change. The point being, though, that right, but those are like the potential for crazy different experiences are often in that space, because when you bring in multiplayer, you bring in so many things and so much, for lack of a word, you kind of accessibility and dumbing down you have to do in order to hit that critical mass to find people who will play with you. That it's just really hard. So it ends up being, just feast or famine.
Yeah, I always just go back to my belief in game design. Like, Valheim is such a great example. It sells for $20. It was extremely successful for the small studio. So not a whole lot to make, but still relatively very profitable. It doesn't compete with like any games as a service type of thing. That's big budget, but it does show, again, the strength of the of game design's role in making really profitable things.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, we have to make a decision of, because the budgets for these games keep going up and up and up, right? God of War, the latest one, its budget is astronomical. Cyberpunk's budget was out of this world, right? It's just, if the players keep purchasing them and they keep getting a following, they're going to keep being created. But it becomes harder and harder for a director who wants to make something in that sort of kind of category, because it just the games are just so expensive to make.
Yeah, money is a real thing, and I feel like in the world of free to play, people they want everything cheap and on sale and stuff. But I mean, it's our careers. Like, as much as everybody I know of in games got there because of passion, at the end of the day, we still have to pay rent, right? I still have to pay for daycare and all this stuff. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Money's a real thing, and the industry will not succeed without money coming in. Obviously, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I feel like the dream era of games will really happen if we ever get to universal basic income. Because at that point, people could, if they really want to, just make their crazy game for a year and then not fear about losing their life.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about fan-owned companies like Legion M?
Unfamiliar with that.
Sorry, fan-run companies like what?
Fan-owned. So we're moving into more of an NFT-driven and Ethereum-based market, right? So as digital currency is going in, and that becomes a finance option for developers, what's to keep people from investing into game companies themselves and just making money off of the games that they want to purchase?
Well,
I think that's probably something that's coming.
Does anyone know where the dust ended up settling on Fig? That was a huge initiative several years ago. I know with some of the ex-studio heads from Double Fine and Scribblenauts and such. Not Scribblenauts. Yeah, gosh, why can't I remember their name?
Too early. But
anywho, it was early. Yeah. Interesting concept.
Double Fine.
Yeah, no, but Fifth Cell, that was it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
have they launched anything off that? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of legalese that folks have to jump through in order to really pay things out in the traditional way. I suppose if you want to fund shares of ownership with crypto, you get to conveniently skip all that until regulation catches up. So that's probably appealing for companies doing it now. I don't know. I mean,
I feel that's the biggest room for growth until the regulations pop in. It's like, hey, you offer, like, look at Sandbox. Sandbox is like, hey, we have sand, and it has a direct, Ethereum trade out, which goes to a direct cash trade out. So what's to say if someone created a game on that platform, like they could empower the players to actually make profit off of their platform, which is kind of what Roblox's disguise was and Minecraft's disguise was too. So it could, you could finance games you want to play.
Yeah, it's the next evolution of crowdfunding that, puts more money directly in the hands of developers. I mean, you're essentially already financing the games you want to play by voting with your dollar. I mean, that was Garvin's one sort of distilled point I remember him getting to, is the only language that these folks understand is money. And so if you need to vote, that's what you have to do. And so, buying a game at full price is a statement. In that case, not enough people voted for a sequel effectively, that it, so it didn't happen. But Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to continue to see innovation in that crowdsourcing space, and like it's becoming more and more frictionless to get that money around and track and distribute ownership thanks to building things on the blockchain. But when the regulations do pop in, that does start to become a bit of an accounting nightmare. It's easy to do for right now. I'm successful to see some companies doing it, but I think you eventually run into a lot of the same problems that you might have with a game that's massively crowdfunded, even on an existing project like Fig. Once you start having, gamers love to blame the shareholders and shareholder-driven public companies as the problems and the reasons why their games have microtransactions crammed in them and they're not as fun as they used to be. So once gamers themselves end up becoming the shareholders, like, don't they just end up having to start confronting some of the same difficulties that, companies on the actual development team does? It's not going to be a silver bullet that solves things. It might let sort of more interesting games collect money than they would, but that's not really any different than Kickstarter. I would be do you have any idea, like any examples of games that have been kind of not only crowd-funded, but sort of crowd stake-held like that have come out? It sounds like it'd be a pretty fraught process. I mean, too many cooks in the kitchen is a saying for a reason,
Well, you could say League of Legends is that, right? In some aspect, even though it wasn't a finance thing, it was pretty much fan-run.
Well, so Dota certainly was, but there were hundreds of, or if not thousands of, Warcraft 3 mods that were nowhere close to as successful, right? So, and this is going to be the problem with anything like fan-made or fan-designed. Every once in a while, you're going to get a person or people that are a group that is really, really talented, and most of the time you're going to get, very mediocre or far worse. And so, but then what happened with Riot is, a company was formed out of a mixture of the very talented people that worked on Dota and seasoned veterans of the industry that were also very talented. So I'm not sure that that's strictly a great example, but that's what the first thing I worry about is any kind of, I talk about democratic design and a lot on my channel. It's just like Luca was saying, it's very fraught with potential for failure. There's just too many people that are gamers and they're not necessarily designers or artists or programmers.
But I think a majority of the market now is mid-core, not necessarily even gamers anymore, right? So I think what we're seeing is consumerism is moving more into interactive experiences versus just straightforward one solo game experience, right? Twitch is far larger than most of the gaming demographics out there, and the viewership is kind of dictating where the industry is moving. I think the subject of the room was like, what are the new genres? And I'm like, well, maybe the genre isn't games.
Right. Yeah,
so that's what I'm kind of looking at too. And I'm doing a lot of research and putting a lot of money into figuring this out as well. So curious everybody's input.
One thing, if I can hop in, one thing you can do is gate the interaction of the community. And like, let's say they control matrices around, like we're building a card game and we discuss this often. Like one thing you can do is create a DAO that allows the community to interact with different things that affect the game, but don't actually affect the production or output of the materials required to build the game. Let's say like there's a deck of 250 cards, plays similar to Magic, and there's a matrix of attributes. So if the community decides to vote and nerf a card because it's OP, they can do that, but they can't actually create the cards themselves.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, another thing you can do is we introduced something called, so we had an NFT sale for 15 of the first cards in the deck. And in doing that, we also released a masterpiece of each card. And one interesting thing we did, I think it's interesting, is so there's, let's say one of the cards is called Recon. There's 20,000 of that particular card. It has a rarity rating, and it's obviously scarcity is governed by blockchain. But then the masterpiece of that card, what it does is it's a 1 of 1. And if you own it, what it does is it pays a portion of the 10% royalty to the holder of the masterpiece for any cards that depict that art. So there's, essentially yield farming or economic upside to hold the masterpiece based on the secondary market sales of the actual playable cards.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think all these things are just, I think you're going to see so much more of this in the future. And I definitely agree with you, like Starcaster, about basically player-funded game studios, because I really think, the big thing in this era is all about funding the future that you want to live in, or, funding the games that you want to play. And I think
that's the pay-to-win mentality. That's what we created. Right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I think is going to happen. I'm on the same page with.
Yeah. So I definitely do think you're going to see that. I just think there's going to be some barrier of, because the closest example to this so far has been Kickstarter. But Kickstarter, a lot of the games that get funded on Kickstarter, it's mostly for marketing, because the games are just a lot more expensive than players imagine. Even a AA game these days is going to cost upwards of like 10 million, 20 million at least, right? And so you really don't see races like that in Kickstarter so much. The only example, there's a couple of, edge cases like Star Citizen, but those are kind of the really rare cases, right? And so in order to kind of ICO or something, a game, it's going to have to be upwards of millions, right? And so I think you will see that. I think the future is going to be a lot more of that, but the time it will take to start to bleed into like sort of quote unquote mainstream games where you have credentialed kind of industry veterans participating in something like that, I still think we're a bit off from that. But yeah.
I'm kind of leaning on the fact that even veterans may not be a winning ticket for the fan bases anymore. I mean, you're looking at celebrityism right now is kind of dying out, where you're seeing more, patrons from the actual player base becoming leads. Look at Ninja and all these guys who have massive followings. Like, if you're not broadcasting on Twitch, I really worry. 15 years from now, that's going to be like, oh, you guys actually used to be the ones making that. That's like the engineer in the Boeing company.
Yeah, I mean, I totally know what you mean, but I think at the end of the day, you're going to need people who kind of understand the craft, understand how to do certain things.
I 100% agree. I'm just worried about people's understanding of how things work and how we've kind of created not a mass understanding of game development, but we've actually aided in the downfall of actual realistic financing and funding. I'm a game developer, right? So I've been doing this for 28 years, same as you guys, right? We've been here a long time. And at the end of the day, I don't call myself an indie game developer, but some people do. And I'm like, what's the difference between an indie game developer and a game developer? Just the word. So
totally.
And what that does, from an investment and a finance standpoint, what a lot of people don't realize, it just means you sound cheap. Oh, you make cheap games. Oh, cool. Really? You want to spend $2 million? That's way too much. That's where that fan base starts bouncing off. And I'm like, can you just stop saying that word indie? It's such a bad thing.
Well, I think right now, what's sort of tired is really kind of the AAA studio. Someone tweeted out it's cringe to work in what was it, Luca? It's cringe to work in Fang. Fang is Facebook, Fang. Amazon, etc. But now I kind of think it's almost cringe to work in AAA. It's you start to get the stigma of, I feel like the indies, a lot of the games I play recently that I really resonate with, Valheim's a good example, is an indie game. It's not a game by a AAA studio, right? And so, really, the future is just all about giving players and basically giving anybody who wants to make a game the tools and methods to do it without having to code or having to have some crazy pipelines and all this stuff. And so you're going to see more and more better games in the future, just because you don't have all the kind of barriers and bureaucracy that you have to go through at a AAA studio.
Yeah, the best design work is being done at the indie level. So when I think of it as promising from a design and pure game sort of standpoint, and less about the profitability of it all.
Yep.
So according to like the new game genres, since I came in late and missed everything, what do you guys want to see genre-wise? What is it that you're looking forward to, or what is it that you're doing?
Well, we kind of went around the bend on it.
That you can legally talk about. Okay, so I missed it all.
Well, no,
Yeah,
it'll be up online is really just what I kind of meant to say, and just kind of give a hat tip to that.
Right.
Well, we didn't say what games we wanted to see. We said we were talking about the games we think are going to be prevalent, which I think might be two different things.
I do remember
totally
Green Beach volleyball at some point.
Yeah, that was Kevin. That's Kevin voting with his dollar.
Listen. Not only is it very good Pong gameplay, but it's almost like a dating sim where you have to you have to get this girl to like you enough to want to be your partner, and like the best people, the strongest spikers are like really hard to date. Tina was not easy to get.
That's right.
Did you like it?
I played.
I'm asking as somebody who's worked on the game. That's why I'm asking.
I
played a lot of beach
fucking
volleyball.
love Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball.
And the game itself is amazing. Like, I might joke about the visuals as many people do, but the game itself was amazing. So
a lot of people don't realize, like, culturally, Dead or Alive, outside of its gravure-esque style, like the beach volleyball element was kind of designed towards women, and it was presented in a way like Barbie was. So it's like we saw stats that more women played the game than men.
Oh yeah,
and Itagaki was like, "See, I told you."
Get the bathing suits. You could tan them. You could make them more pale. You could. I like the little mini games, though. Some of them were a little bit gratuitous, like the racing game where you start tits in the sand, and it's like there's no need for that.
But they were giving into the whole experience of being like a gravure experience. So like in Japan that really worked, but in the US it's like, what?
And also, by the way, if we're gonna, this is an extended love note to Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. It set me up for a very dangerous expectation for how easy it is to stand on top of a pool float whenever I eventually started.
Right.
Yeah, so actually, when the game came out, the Tecmo and all the contractors that were working for it, they had like a pool party and had those on there, and I quickly found out that 250 pounds or whatever I was at the time does not work on those floats.
Yeah, I think I completely underestimated the core strength and balance of all of the women in that game, because that is not as easy as they make it look.
They are ninjas.
Look, I think we should shelve it just because I know our next week's Theorycraft is 100% dedicated to this game. So,
really?
Yeah, we should probably not spoil too much.
I had no idea this was such a resonant vein with everybody in this room. It's awesome.
Seriously, play the game. It's fucking good.
It's great.
Well, this is kind of where I was going. Like, Ninja Gaiden, to me, even, it, in general, is one of the best action games ever made. And at the time, it was so badly reviewed. They're like, this game is too fucking hard. And I'm like, now you're looking at Souls. I'm like, well, go back and try to play Ninja Gaiden for the first time.
Yeah, you missed the window by just this much.
Yeah. So I keep looking like, game genres in general, like going back to that and away from the tan lines. But, we've been trying ourselves to establish whatever we can possibly think of as a potential new genre. And one of the games we had pushed the past 2 years was a social sci-fi game where you play as a first-person narrative where basically you're playing as you. And, it was interesting talking to the investment side, and they're just like, oh, is this based on anything? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, yeah, new IP.
Yeah, you're saying it's just
how do you get past that?
Yeah, how do you get past that sort of, there's nothing quite like this, so we're not interested sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like, prove out the market?
It's the acceptance on the money side. Like, I can come off of a AAA project and see a company make $150 million, but you throw them something new and they're like, hey, I think this will be socially awesome on Twitch and people will play it because it brings viewership. And they're like, what does that mean? And I see the money side as like two sides. Like, even in the game industry, there's people on the money side who just don't play. And I'm like, are you even following what is trending? Do you guys know what's working? They'll say, oh, Valheim, because it's a popular word in the groups. I'm like, well, that game's been fucking done already. No offense. Oh, wait, maybe you should make an Among Us. Like, for 2 years in development, or like Can I slap you a few times and maybe ask you to not cry? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even, it's probably frustrating in the investment way to try to get a game funded that is not market tested already. But, even internally in bigger AAA studios, it's even harder, if not harder, just.
The other thing is, like, the age range that we were aiming at is definitely not ones that are making financial decisions, right? We're aiming at a larger, more newer, what we call mid-core base, right? So everybody's like, oh, but you're focusing on mid-core. Oh. So I'm always curious how someone approaches this in a meeting. Like, do you have to be back in a AAA studio, then outsourcing back to guys like us to get these kinds of projects going? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, I think. And that's, maybe this comes to what you're talking about, and this is the way you just kind of just sell the game to players, and then that's how you can fund it, right? But I think really the platforms aren't really matured enough yet for that.
Do you think the platforms are moving away with Metaverse?
What do you mean moving away?
I'm just looking at the unification of content on a platform. So Epic's got $1 billion going into Metaverse, and I think people are not looking at it in the broad spectrum of it being like instantaneous access across different games with similar content. So I'm curious if it even needs a console at that point. Is it all going to be cloud-based like MetaHuman is? If that's the case, what are we looking at in terms of player adoption in the future, and what platforms do you think are going to be pretty dominant in that time period?
Yeah,
well, this is a rabbit hole.
That's a good question.
It's just kind of exploded.
Come on, Alice, join me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine seeking funding, risk. I mean, capital wants to avoid risk and wants to try to guarantee returns. And I think that's a fairly fundamental rule. The metaverse allowing for, portability and easier game creation within like a unified ecosystem is great. But if you're talking about getting money to do those things, I'm sure you're going to still run into a lot of the same challenges. You're probably just going to, unless we start to move into a society that just is embracing visionaries, more easier. I have to imagine that most platforms, most media generally go through this same kind of arc, right? Where early on, I mean, people, there are no rules. It's trying to find its footing. It's not even really a question of green lighting stuff, because it's just about figuring things out, just doing the hard work. You have maybe like a giant benefactor like Valve footing the bill for, years of VR R&D off the bat, just trying to kind of make it happen. And then once the dust eventually starts settled, you have these larger platforms and controlling institutions emerge, and then they want to kind of keep things going the way that feels safe for them, because they've got, mouths to feed and boards to please and stuff like that. And so I don't see us really escaping that pattern. I think that the lure of, decentralization generally, well, I don't know. I don't want to like fully go into just a talk on kind of the ramifications of a world based on the blockchain, even though I feel like that's where Clubhouse inevitably goes. It's kind of like Godwin's law around here. But like, I think that the assumption that a system that allows for, decentralized and portable content and all these sorts of things means that like a society which values all those things equally is just going to sort of naturally follow. And I think there's going to be a ton of resistance to that sort of stuff kind of through and through. I do feel like right now things are shaking up. Because the game development is evolving incredibly quickly. People can learn things so much faster now. The tools are in more people's hands than ever. And so experimentation is faster. But I do think that, you're still going to find things settling into trends and where people want to poke their heads out, what risks they want to take. And I think the phase that it feels like we're in now, just to go back to Chris's point, is just like AAA is sort of the architecture of, the industry that we're in right now. And so any kind of like revolution threatens that more than anything else, because it has sort of the most to lose. So yeah, I don't know that I feel like AAA is on notice, but certainly once you get to a certain size, you probably can't keep up with the pace quite as quickly as folks, during a time of this rapid evolution. So we'll see what happens. Sorry, that's my theory on everything. It just kind of came out of nowhere.
That's the truth, though. You're just basically saying that hordist mentalities won't survive, and that makes a lot of sense.
But I don't know. I feel like, the risk is always there for there to be something new too, As soon as there is a platform which develops the easiest way for people to create games, mint things, transact, whatever, and so something gains sort of critical mind share, then the temptation for that platform to, write into their NFT smart contract or their terms of service or their store fee, some small amount of money that eventually becomes a friction point for people wanting to be on it, and then new challengers emerge. And I mean, am I just describing capitalism? I don't even know where I am now. Should we get back to games?
We rabbit hole just as we predicted.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, to kind of bring this thing full circle, it's just like new game genres are essentially really, it's part of it's like trends, but I think it also is really kind of underserved players. Like there's players out there who want to have an experience in a game which doesn't exist yet. And I think traditionally in the industry, it's like the only way the player would get a game like that is through a large established studio that is traditional. And I think we're starting to see this year has been so much like capital raised by startups, each with probably founders and teams that want to build something, a game for an audience that is underserved right now. And so I think at least you'll see a lot more traction there. And then I think, in the future really is going to be, if we talk about the metaverse and the future opportunities there, players will be able to kind of, create their, have a lot more tools and the abilities to create their own games for the genres that they feel like aren't represented by the big studios. So
I just wanted to jump in. Thanks for inviting me up. I've rounded the corner with you all. I was really excited about the undulating Ungibit simulator, which is beach volleyball. But I think everyone's pulling kind of on the same threads, whereas like AAA becomes more and more expensive. They're formulaic. They have to prove out thousands of hours. As we're moving away from box products and we're moving towards live service games, I think the designs are changing. There's more proven models. So the future of gaming then becomes the indie space where they can take the risks. And then as, again, pulling on those threads or bringing them back together as like Epic is pouring more money into the metaverse, they're like games are easier to develop. We're gonna see more and more interesting game designs surface, because it's easier to make them. It's integrated into the full system. So AAA will kind of maintain the larger platforms, and then the indie developers will start to create these one-off experiences. A good example, maybe it's not a great example, but like Inside, for instance, like if you look at that game, what they created, it's one of my favorite indie games. I think it's like almost the highest form of high art in video games ever created.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So if you take that and you tried to pitch that to a AAA company, there's no way in hell they would ever make that. Like the cost, the development cycle, and what its success will never happen in AAA. So, but AAA can, if I say AAA, like in the Epic realm, right? Like they have this giant platform. They're building all the tools. They have a lot of products in that space. If you could just if I could take one string and pull it really far and be like, oh, I'm playing Fortnite, and then suddenly like I just enter a portal and now I'm playing Inside on the same platform, assuming that could be a thing, and I pay the entry fee. I think that is where we're going to start to see the new genres, which could be if we remove the marketing aspect and you just rub up against really interesting products that are on that platform, I think we can start to see people make a lot of money in the indie space. People make high risk chances of making these experiences, but I do not think those are going to happen in the AAA space, just based on the costs. Like they're just not interested in making an Inside game. As much as Inside offered to the gaming community and the development community and just that experience, I don't think any AAA studio would take that pitch and greenlight it and pay for it. I'm Drew. I'm done talking.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I mean, I totally agree with you. But I think it's going to change. I think even the bigger AAA studios are going to reinvest in these smaller games, even if they will return less money than, say, if they invested in, a bigger AAA games as a service game. Just for the brand ad, I think has a lot of value for the studios.
If you were to pick any AAA studio though, and have them pick that indie kind of style, like who do you think would be shouldering that, and what engine or what technology would they launch it on? Like,
Fucking Apple.
oh,
Fucking indie
that's a
arcade.
that's a wild card. All right, wild card. They're not AAA game developers, so they're not included.
I
in
disagree.
This.
What if you buy a AAA game studio
Well,
because you're
exactly.
Apple?
There you go. That actually is the play, right? Like that's what Microsoft's doing. They're just like, oh, folding you in. Oh, folding you in. And that goes back to Valve even. Valve doesn't really make games, right? Valve will buy a game, a game idea, and then put all their workforce to polish it and bring it up to quality, and then put it to market. So Valve absolutely has been doing that since forever. Like they've made 2 games ever, and everything else, all their IP has been bought and then redistributed. So yeah, that's a valid path to go down.
I mean, if you're talking about trying to,
guys, a reminder.
Yeah,
I should probably.
We are quite over time. Do you want to end it?
But I can
leave the room open. You want to just duck, Kevin? You can just duck.
Yeah, I can duck and let you guys finish. That's fine.
Okay.
Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time.
Yep.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a good one.
Hey,
man.
Thanks, Kevin. I followed you. Yeah, cheers.
Oh,
Hopefully we have more deep conversations later.
Yeah.
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 I mean, if I think we do this every Wednesday at 6 p.m. PST, so always welcome to join us. But usually what we do is we talk about general news of the week and games, and then also talk about a bigger topic. And we all work in the industry and worked on games for at least 10 years each of us. So
yeah, kudos to you for coming up with the topic this week, Chris. I think that it was just a real eye catcher in the hallway / timeline there. Like, I think that trying to adhere to the usual structure for this one was almost difficult because at the end, like, the open question of this subject just brought in so much audience participation that we just really ripped. Like, it was great. But I'm shocked, man. It was a huge explosion this week.
I think it's the algorithms at work, because this is the first time I've seen this room, but there's a lot of familiar faces in the audience and maybe even on stage. So I'm so happy that I found this place, because this is right up my alley. So cheers.
Yeah, thanks for contributing and joining.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up then. What do you think, Luca?
Yeah, I'm down with that. I mean, I haven't eaten. It's about time. We'll be here next week anyways. So if you want to follow all of us here, I think we probably have Twitter in our bios. But yeah, it's Wednesday, 6 p.m. So we'll see you next week as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheers.